All right, so fat reserves in birds. I know you were thinking about it. Now we've got a problem about it. Are related to the body mass by the formula blah, blah, blah. So what they're saying is that there are no fat birds. They're saying that it's a standard thing. If you're this big, you're going to have this much fat on you. Well, anyway, it's kind of a dumb equation, but here it is. And it's got two variables, F and M. What do you think F stands for? Fat. And what do you think M stands for? Mass, as in like weight, okay? So here, it's pretty simple. If I give you the mass of the bird, you'd stick it in for what? M. And then you just multiply it all out and you'd be able to find F. I'm going to pause for a second. All right, so we're doing number 10 now. And here's the start price. I always put that first. And then I put the 1 plus the rate. But what if I don't know the rate? I leave it as an R or an X. Then I have to put it to a power. The power is supposed to be how many years I do it to. How many years was it again? From here to here is 22 years. I'm putting a 22 right there. And then I know the ending value is 341. That goes over here. Now I taught you a technique called graph both sides and see where they cross. Y equals and Y equals. And you graph both sides and you see where they cross. But I want to warn you that a lot of times people don't see where they cross on the graph. Well, you got to make the window really big. Always go really big on the windows. Go like out to 100 on both directions. Go out to X is like 100, Y is like 100. And then you'll be sure that it's crossing. And then you go second, calculate intersect. I'm going to pause for a second while we try that. I'm going to see if I'm lucky enough that my computer will let me open up my graphing calculator. If it won't, I'll just trust you guys can handle graphing those two equations and seeing where they cross. Has anybody actually got it? Thank you. All right, so I've got my two equations in here on the Y equals screen, and now I go to graph, and it looks like this. Now I go second, calculate, intersect. It's number 5. Here's where the magic happens. There's two places that it intersects. You've got to get close to the one you care about. Do you think I want a negative rate? Think about it. Did the price go down? No, it did not. So I want a positive one. So this is the one that's going to work. That other answer that doesn't actually work, what's the name for those? Extraneous. Very good. So I get close to this answer that should work, and then I hit enter, enter, enter. And did you get an answer of X equals 0.009 and Y equals 3.4? If I look back on here, I already knew the Y equals 3.41. See, it was already on my screen. So obviously I must want the other one, which is the X equals 0.0. Is that 009? Okay, 0099 actually. And what does 0.0099 as a decimal change into as a actual percent? Okay, 0.99%. Now it confuses people because they think 99%. It's not. It's 0.99. That's less than 1%. In fact, if I wanted to round it, I would have been okay with that. If you had rounded this 99 to a 100 right here, and then said it was 1%, it's 0.99. It's close enough to 1% that would make sense. Okay, that's how you could do it with graph both sides and see where they cross. Now I know for people that are watching this video that aren't being taught this graph both sides and see where it crosses, let me show all of you how you could have solved it with the calculator and not graphing, because some of you hate graphing, I know. So here's option B. If I want to get this R, which is actually an X in my equation, alone, then I could start by the whole get the clump alone deal. This is my clump I need to get alone, so I start by dividing by 2.74 on both sides. You get how on a calculator that would have been easy? Just divide these two numbers. Okay? Next step to get this X alone is to get rid of the power of 22. So you put it to the power of 1/22. Yes. And then once I've done that, this is to the power of 1 over 22. So it's not like this way is super easy either. But it would work. And now the X is almost alone. What's by it? The 1. I got a -1 from both sides. Good. So I subtract 1 from both sides. And you got to do that on your calculator, or you got to graph both sides and see where it crosses. Either way, you get the same answer. Good point. You would get two answers. Why should we get two answers? We did the 22nd root, which technically gives you two answers. Remember how when we do divide by an even root, we got to do absolute value, and that means you get two answers. But again, one of them is extraneous anyways. Okay, so there's two ways to do it. I like graph both sides and see where they cross, because on the ACT test, you can't just follow these little steps that I just showed you, but you could graph both sides and see where they cross. So even on the ACT test, you're stuck on this weird question. You're like, I don't know what this 2 sine of theta is equal to 1/4. I don't even know what that means, but it's an equation. I can graph y equals this, I can graph y equals that, and I can see where they cross. That'll give me the answer. Okay? So even if you don't even really know what it means, it's a way to get the answer. And I'm not suggesting that it's a great method to just do something you don't even understand. You should understand that any equation can be graphed, and if two graphs cross, that's the solution to them typically. All right, yes, sir. Okay, then you have to know the context of the question. If they don't give you any like real world problem, then you just give both answers. But if they give you a real world problem, and then one of them is like how big, let's say that the question is about how big was the fish, and then one of the answers is -2 pounds. Is that possible even? You throw it out. So you have to know the context of the question to know whether or not the answer that you got could work or not. Or if it comes down to like, how many apples did Sally eat that day? And it's like 794. You're like, wait a minute, that's not possible. I'm throwing that one out. Okay, so let's go to, everybody find this one. Peter invests 4,000. Excuse me. What? I don't think you really need them at this point. Let's try at the very end when it's time to do homework. We'll see if it works then. For right now, just stay with me. If you would please write me an equation that involves this. Remember, the start is here, the end is here, and we have 1 plus the rate to the x. Write the equation for this one, but I think a lot of you are going to screw it up. So be careful. There's a twist in here that I'm not sure you can handle. I'm going to pause for a second while you give this a try. All right, so I know that you know that the start value goes here, and therefore this is pretty easy. It's 4,000. You start with 4,000. They don't tell us how much you end with, so we can leave that as a variable or just say end. We don't know the rate, so, oh wait, we do know the rate. It's 3%, 0.03. And then we do know that it's supposed to be 3 years, so we can put a 3 right here for our time.
Not subtract 97.
Okay, hold on. Oh, wait a minute, isn't there one more thing that I have to have in this formula, and maybe even another thing after that? Divide the 0.03 by what? 4, because that makes it quarterly. But then here's the problem. What you just did right here with this 3 would have been 3 years, so you have to times it by 4. By 4. Because then you have 3 years times 4 quarters is 12 quarters. Okay, so whatever you do here, you should also do it here. Now, could you have just fixed that by putting a 12 right here? Yeah, absolutely. If you would have been smart enough to change the 3 years into 3 times 4 is 12 quarters, totally works. But do you get the common mistake answer is people go, okay, so 3 years, put a 3 here, quarterly, divide by 4, and then they've got it with a years here and a quarters here, and that can't work. So yeah, that's where you got to be careful. How long is 3 years? 3 times 4 is, it's 12 quarters of years. Okay. Anybody actually get that figured out? Ooh, several people. All right, good. Move on to the next one. This one, bank account starts with 1,000. The interest rate is compounding monthly. Ooh, I know what that means. After 6.5 years, Careful, years and monthly. Get how that could fool you? Careful with that. There is 2,300 in the account. Oh, that's the end value. They gave me the start. They gave me the end. See if you can figure this out. You will need a graphing calculator. And personally, I'd solve it with graph both sides and see where they cross. I'll pause while you give this one a shot. Ready? So here's what you should have done. You should have started with 1,000. Then you should have multiplied it by 1 plus the rate, which was no, it didn't say. Interesting. So that's what I'm supposed to figure out. And then this is to 6.5 years, and it's compounded monthly. So I'm dividing this by 12, and this is 2,300. Oh, the kid was so close, but they're going to get it wrong. Know why? Because that 65 would be wrong. And if it was even 6.5, which is what it's supposed to be, it's still wrong because that's in years and that's in months. So then I have to times this by the same thing I divided that by. So times this by 12. 6.5 times 12 gives you apparently 78. Then it's 78 months that you're really figuring out for 6.5 years. Okay, now that would work. Graph both sides, see where they cross. Do you get that these are big numbers? So if you were going to go and graph it with a normal window, clearly not going to work because your window is only going to go to like 10 or maybe 50 or something if you just done another problem. You'll have to make the window like 5,000 in both directions or something like that, really big. And then when you graph both sides, you'll see where they cross. And then you go second, calculate intersect. Did somebody actually get the answer for this one? Yes, several people. I'm going to go with Mr. R in the second spot. 12.88. Can anybody verify that number? Okay, good. And just to clarify, 12.8% interest would be awesome, but it's pretty rare. Pretty rare. I do know of a guy who is getting 8% interest on his investment because he bought into a company that was building a nursing home. And the company that was building their nursing home is still doing well because there's lots of old people. And so his bond that pays 8% interest is still working, okay? Now, if that company goes out of business, let's say, heaven forbid, it gets hit by a gigantic meteorite and they don't have insurance, okay, well then, he's not going to get any money anymore from his bond. So that's how those investments work. As long as the company still makes money, you make money. Now, as the company's super safe, you don't have to get 8%. They'll only pay you like, what, Apple, if you want to borrow money to Apple, believe it or not, they borrow money. Even though they have billions in the bank, they still borrow money. I know it seems kind of crazy, but they'll, if you want to, you can buy a bond from Apple, which is you borrowing them money, and they'll pay interest. But Apple is so big and strong that they can command, like, you don't get much interest because they're so big and you're, like, for sure going to get your money back. There's not much risk for you, and therefore they don't have to pay much in interest. So basically, there's a risk-reward ratio there. All right, so bottom line, this a lot of interest, so I'd be thinking there's something fishy about this investment, at least in the current environment. All right, moving on. I think we've done enough problems. I think you've got the idea. So tonight's homework is problems that are like that. It's a review. It's it's the second day of the application, so it's not review yet. Review will be Monday. It's skipping just the primes. Remember that the first prime number is 2. So you may skip problem 2 and 3 and 5 and 7. I don't even know how long the assignment goes, if somebody's got it awake yet. All right. Goes up to 17. Well, hey, lucky you get to skip 17. So, all right. So, skip the primes, do all the other ones. All right, that's all I have for you for today.